Behind the Guitar is brought to you by the Martin Guitar Foundation, RCN, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Recorded live from the campus of Steel Stacks in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, our host, Craig Thatcher.
Craig Thatcher here with you for part 2 of Behind the Guitar with our very special guest, Mr. Roger McGuinn. In the last episode, we were discussing the formation of the Byrds. Can we pick that up, Roger?
Right, so we got the group together. We started to rehearse at the World Pacific Studios, where Jim Dixon, our manager, was a producer and engineer. And Jim had the idea that he wanted us to dance, to do little moves like all the groups did, like the ones with the tuxedos and everything.
Freddie and the Dreamers.
Yeah, so he hired this guy from Las Vegas named Jimmy something. And he was supposed to teach us how to do these unison dance steps, kick our feet out this way and kick our feet out that way. And we weren't going for it at all. We were just looking at him like, man, this is so square. We're not going to mess with this. And finally, after a week, he threw his hands up. He said, I quit. You guys don't have what it takes to make it in show business. And he left. So right after that, we started to get tight as a band. We started to really get it together. But we weren't that tight. Michael Clark had just learned how to play the drums on cardboard boxes.
Oh.
Yeah, we got some real drums, but he was sort of a military style drummer. He could play a lot of rat-a-tat-tat kind of stuff, but he couldn't do rock and roll beats. So when we got the record deal with Columbia Records, Terry Melcher was assigned to us as our producer. He was Doris Day's son. And Terry was 23 at the time, something like that. And he knew the Beach Boys. He knew that Brian Wilson hired this band that worked for Phil Spector and everybody else in town. Jan and Dean were on, all the groups used this band. Loose group of musicians called the Wrecking Crew. It was about 23 or 24 different musicians that would Glenn Campbell was one of them. But he hired the Wrecking Crew to play on Mr. Tambourine Man, and the flip side, I knew I'd Want You. And when he did it, he told the Wrecking Crew to play that kind of chink feel, which was the same feel as Don't Worry Baby from the Beach Boys. And these guys had played on Don't Worry Baby, so they knew that. So they started doing this, and I was allowed to play with them because I'd have had a few years of experience as a studio musician in New York.
So they didn't have the rest of the Byrds?
No, they wouldn't allow David Crosby, Chris Hillman, Michael Clark, or Gene Clark to play on the record. And they were all crazy, out of their mind, angry about it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And they did get to play on everything else after that. But let me give you an example. The Wrecking Crew and I, on my electric 12s, knocked off Mr. Tambourine Man and I Knew I'd Want You in one 3-hour session.
Oh.
Whereas it took 77 takes to get Turn, Turn, Turn when all the band was allowed to play. So the real reason he hired the Wrecking Crew was for money. It cost thousands of dollars an hour.
Sure.
And we were wasting money like crazy in the studio. It was incredible. That's after the Wrecking Crew. So that was my experience. And the Wrecking Crew was really cool. There were guys with black leather jackets with their collars turned up, and they all drove big black Cadillacs so they could put their gear in the back.
To fit the gear in.
Yeah, and they were like a motorcycle gang. They were really cool guys. And the reason they called them the Wrecking Crew was because Hal Blaine came up with the name because the original studio musicians always wore like a 3-piece suit, and they didn't smoke or drink or coffee or anything in the studio. And the Wrecking Crew came in Levi's and T-shirts and looked like James Dean, and they smoked cigarettes, and they were just wild.
So they wrecked the whole.
That's what the old guys said. You're going to wreck our whole business for us. Yeah, right. Yeah. So they said, we're the Wrecking Crew. And they played on all the hits. There's so many #1 hits that you've heard that it's really the Wrecking Crew playing.
Tommy Tedesco.
Tommy was.
Carol
He
Kay.
wasn't on. The guys on the Mr. Tambourine session were Hal Blaine.
Drummer.
Larry Knechtel on the bass. Leon Russell on the Fender Rhodes. Jerry Cole and Bill Pittman played guitars, and I think Bill Pittman played the Chinks. And that's all he did on it. And I played the Rickenbacker,
You had the main part.
Yeah.
That was quite a change for them to let someone come in and actually do that.
Right. But they let me do it.
That's way cool. So you are together with the Byrds. By this time now, have you met the Beatles or?
Well, we did. Before Turn, Turn, Turn came out, we went to England and did a concert tour there. And Derek Taylor had been the press officer for the Beatles. He introduced us to the Beatles. And the first thing John said was, "What's with the little specs?" because I used to wear little cobalt blue sunglasses on my nose. I didn't mean to wear them on my nose, but during the course of an evening, they'd sort of slip down there from perspiring, you know. And that's just how I wore them. They were my prescription glasses. I got the idea from John Sebastian in the Village. He had some little cobalt blue round glasses. I said, wow, those are really groovy shades. And he said, yeah, try them on and move your head around and look at the streetlights. It was pretty cool. So that's why I got those.
So the second big hit for you was?
Turn, Turn, Turn. And it was from the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. And it was a song that I'd heard Pete Seeger do, and I'd played on it with Judy Collins on her third album.
Oh, she did it as well.
Yeah, but Pete and Judy did it sort of straight. They did, to everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. And I changed it when I put a rock beat to it, and I gave it a little more of a push, and I put some passing chords in there that weren't there before, so it came out like. Everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. Sing on the turn. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stone, a time to gather stone together. Okay, everybody. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time of love, a time of hate, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace, a time to refrain from embracing. Here we go. To everything, turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time for love, a time for hate, a time for peace. I'm sure it's not too late.
That was a big song for y'all.
Yeah, it was #1.
Yeah, sure was.
And so was Tambourine Man in about 13 countries. So we had 2 #1s and met the Beatles and hung out with them. It was really cool.
I saw you on Shindig.
Oh, yeah.
Hullabaloo.
Chivalry,
Yeah.
Hollywood
Doing
A Go-Go,
Yeah, remember those shows?
the Lloyd Thaxton Show.
Lloyd Thaxton. Oh my. Gosh, I hadn't thought about that.
And
in
then
years.
in England, we were on Ready, Steady, Go and the Old Grey Whistle Test.
Oh,
The Old Grey
sure.
Whistle Test was an interesting concept. They'd go up to somebody and play them a pop song and see if somebody had gray hair could whistle it. And if they could, it was, I don't know if it was good or bad.
So you were at the forefront of folk rock, and also then this psychedelia type music, you know, to a certain extent. How would you address that?
Well, we didn't want to get locked in a box with folk rock, so we started experimenting with other forms of music, and we listened to some Ravi Shankar and Andre Segovia and John Coltrane, a lot of different forms of music. And when we were on the road, I bought a Philips cassette recorder in England, and it was such a new device that they didn't have any pre-recorded cassettes. So I got a couple of blanks, and we ran into a guy that had John Coltrane's India and Africa, and I recorded that on one side of a cassette, and then Ravi Shankar on the other side.
Oh, boy.
And we put it on the tour bus and flipped the tape over every time it would end Ravi, we'd put on Coltrane, and then we put Shankar back on. And by the time we got back to LA, we'd written a song called 8 Miles High about our trip to England, and it just came out with this Coltrane Shankar kind of thing. And it was really a tribute to John Coltrane. I was trying to emulate Coltrane with you'll hear that in his thing. He does it over and over again. It's kind of
with the
like a
sax.
theme that he has, and then he goes all around it with lots of scales and notes that he did, and honks and things that he was a wild man on the sax. Yeah,
Certainly
and
was.
so I was trying to emulate that, and it came out 8 Miles High, and people naturally associated it with drugs and thought it was a psychedelic song, but it was really a jazz fusion song.
It's about the airplane
It
being
was about
8
an airplane
miles.
ride, yeah.
What happened in '68?
Well, we dabbled in country music as early as the Turn, Turn, Turn album, because Chris Hillman came from a bluegrass background, and he suggested we do Satisfied Mind, and I'd written Mr. Spaceman a little later. So we were into country music, but not whole hog. Chris was at a bank in Beverly Hills, and he bumped into this guy from Waycross, Georgia, or from Florida originally, and invited him to come over to our rehearsal. And I was really into the John Coltrane thing, so I wanted to get a piano player who could play like McCoy Tyner style. I sat Graham Parsons down at the piano. I said, play me something like McCoy Tyner. And he did some kind of Floyd Kramer, Nashville style piano. And I went, well, this guy's good. This guy's really good. He's got talent. We can work with him. I didn't know that he was really George Jones in a sequin suit. He was a country lover. He loved it so much that he kind of influenced us to want to go to Nashville and record the whole album, Sweetheart of the Rodeo. And we did. It was his influence.
Just love that record. That album is a game changer in country rock, if you will.
Well, if you listen to it carefully, there's not much rock in it. It's art, kind of really trying to do justice to pure country music. If there's no rock in it. The only rock in it was us. We're from the rock background.
From the rock background.
Yeah.
in the country.
And maybe it had more drums than country usually had, because at that point they just used a snare with brushes.
Yes.
Yeah. So it had real drums, and maybe that was what the rock part was. But nobody liked it. Nobody liked it.
I liked it.
No, I don't mean. Well, when
I
it
know
first
what you
came out, I don't know. When it first came out, the rock people, because there was this political divide between rock and country. It wasn't just music. It was about lifestyle, and the country people were for the Green Berets, and the rock people for against the Vietnam War, and it was a clash of culture clash.
Certainly.
So when we went to Nashville, we got a really cold reception at the Grand Ole Opry, and the rock people thought we betrayed them by going over to the other side. And the country people didn't accept us because we were a bunch of hippies trying to invade their territory. So it just kind of fell through the cracks commercially at first. But gradually, over the years, it sort of notched its way up. And now there are 3 Byrds albums in the Rolling Stone Top 500 albums, and Sweetheart of the Rodeo is the top one.
Pretty amazing. How about that? So, 1973, was that roughly when the Byrds?
Yeah, what happened was David Crosby came over to my house with his manager, Elliot Roberts, and we all sat down and talked. And David said, your modern day Byrds, some of the stuff you do is pretty good, but some of it isn't. And I had to agree with him, because I was letting everybody have a song whether it was any good or not. I was just being nice, letting everybody have a song. And some of the stuff wasn't up to the Byrds. And Crosby had an idea of getting the original band back together for an album.
He was gone by this time, Lo.
What?
He was gone by this time?
David?
David, was he in the band anymore?
Oh, yeah, he'd been out of the band for years.
Been a long
No, there
time.
was nobody left but me.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody left one by one. First Gene, because Gene was afraid to fly. And I
Yes.
said, Gene, if you can't fly, you can't be a bird. And then Michael quit and Chris quit, and I was left holding the bag. And I hired Clarence White and Gene Parsons and John York. He was good for a while, but his girlfriend didn't like him going on the road, so he quit. And then we got Skip Batten, and that band stayed together for about 3 years. And that was a good performing band.
it
We
must
did
have been.
Untitled with that band and got some pretty good airplay with Chestnut Mare and Lover of the
beautiful song.
Bayou and some of the other songs that were on there.
So then you embarked on your
Well, I was just going to say, so we did this album with Arista, with the original Birds.
okay.
Yeah, and it wasn't a big success. It wasn't a big failure either. It just didn't hit the chart, top of the charts. So we disbanded the whole thing, and I decided it was time to go solo, which is something that I'd always wanted to do since I was a kid, because I used to go to Pete Seeger concerts after he left the Weavers. I went to Weavers concerts with him in it, and when he left, I went, how's he going to pull this off all by himself? He was great. He had like 4 or 5 instruments up there, and he'd tell stories and get the whole audience singing. I remember I met him when I was about 16. I said, Pete, how do you account for your success? He said, well, I think it's because I get the audience singing along, and they hear themselves singing, and then they like me. So I said, that's what I want to do when I grow up. And that's what I'm doing now.
And you've been solo for
Quite a while.
quite a long time.
Yeah.
My goodness. Okay, so could you please play one more song for us?
Okay. Any ideas? Chestnut Mare. Always alone, never with her. Prettiest mare I've ever seen. You have to take my word. I'm gonna catch that horse if I can. And when I do, I'll give her my brand. Well, I was up on Stony Ridge after this chestnut mare. Been chasing her for weeks now. Well, I'd catch a little glimpse of her every once in a while. She'd be off taking a meal or bathing. She was a real fine lady. One day I saw her standing over there in a clearing. So I snuck up to her nice and easy. Waited for the wind to blow just the right way. Got my rope out and I flung it in the air. I'm gonna catch that horse if I can. And when I do, I give her my brand. Well, I got her, and I'm pulling on her. She's pulling back like a mule, trying to climb up a ladder. I take a chance and I jump up on her, land right on top of her the first time. She takes off, running up onto that ridge, higher than I've ever been before. We're running along fine. She sees a sidewinder all coiled up and ready to strike. She doesn't know what to do, so she spooks, jumps off the edge, me holding on. Above the cloud, higher than eagles we're gliding, suspended in the sky, over the moon and straight for the sun we were riding. My eyes were filled with light. Behind us black walls, below us a bottomless canyon, floating with no sound. And gulls far below seem to be suddenly rising, exploding all around. I'm gonna catch that horse if I can. And when I do, I'll give her my brand. And we were falling down this crevice, about a mile down there. I look down and I see a red thing below us. Turns out to be our reflection in a little pool of water, about 6 feet wide and only 1 foot deep. We're coming down out. Finally we hit and we splashed that pool dry. That's when I lost my hold and she got away. But I'm never gonna quit till the day I die. 'Cause I'm gonna get her again someday. I'm gonna catch that horse if I can. And when I do, I'll give her my friend. And we'll be friends for life. She'll be just like my wife. I'm gonna catch that horse. I'm gonna catch that horse. I'm gonna catch that horse if I can. I'm gonna catch that horse if I can.
I think we should talk a little bit about your guitars. We have the 7-string and we have the 12-string. And to do that, we're going to refer once again to our internationally renowned guitar expert, Mr. Dick Boak.
Well, people say that I have the best job in the world because I get to work with the legendary musicians of our generation. And it's certainly been my great fortune to do that. Roger wanted to have something pretty special, a little fancier than an ordinary style 28 guitar, so we gussied it up with some pearl inlay, gave it, you know, the highest selection of quality in respect to the rosewood and the spruce. Put Roger's signature here on the end of the fingerboard, subtle, not too much ego here, just a lot of beauty. And really, I think this is one of the finest 12-string acoustic guitars that you'll find. Of course, it has a little plug so that you can go acoustic electric. This was a very special project for me, very close to my heart, and such an honor to see Roger playing it. So a couple of years went by, and fortunate to have Roger and Camilla visit and have lunch with me. And we were actually having lunch at Myva Joe's restaurant in Nazareth, PA. So we sketched it out on a napkin with 4 tuning machines on this side of the neck and 3 tuning machines on this side, and doubled up the strings here on the bridge, gave it a little bump, and in effect, I can't do it like Roger, but it enabled Roger to play 6-string or 12-string leads. You know, like that. Most of the leads that he played, he explained to me that he plays on the G string, so we doubled up the G string like it was a 12-string guitar. We didn't really know what it was going to be. When the first one was completed, I tried it and I couldn't believe how good it was. So we introduced it, and it was quite a success, and certainly Roger loved it. It was great to see it getting used, and we thought it was an original idea. In fact, 3 or 4 months later, we got an email informing us that Spider John Kerner, a fairly obscure musician, had actually come up with this idea many decades before and had been using it. But certainly in Roger's hands, it's a magnificent guitar, and we've done 2 different versions of this. The number 7 for 7-string is inlaid in one of the hexagons up here. A very special project for me, and a thrill to see Roger playing the Swiss Army knife of guitars.
Thanks, Dick. Roger, would you please play us out with one last song?
I don't know. Oh, I know it. This is a song that I co-wrote really for the movie Easy Rider. And what happened was, this friend of mine was putting together a biker flag, and he wanted somebody to write him a song. So he showed it to Bob Dylan, and Bob wrote some notes on a paper napkin and said, "Here, give this to McGuinn. He'll know what to do with it." And Peter Fonda took the napkin and came over to my house and gave it to me, and it said, "The river flows, it flows to the sea," wherever that. I made up the rest of the words and the melody for it, and we called it The Ballad of Easy Rider. The river flows and flows to the sea. Wherever that river goes, that's where I want to be. Flow, river, flow. Let your waters wash down, take me from this road to some other town. All they wanted was to be free, and that's the way it turned out to be. Flow, river, flow. Let your waters wash down, take me from this road to some other town. Go, river, go to the sea. Flow, river, flow, past the shady tree. Flow to the sea. Thank you all very much. Thank you.